Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In past years, I have been really good about uploading my favorite books and worst books of the previous year in January, usually the first 2 weeks in January. But recently I have been in a bit of a slump, and not only reading wise but also filming and editing wise. So therefore it has taken me a little bit to get this up, and even trying to think of books to put on the list was such a hard task for me. And that's not to say that I didn't read really great books that blew my mind in 2022 or books that really disappointed me in 2022, but just the act of sitting down and trying to remember my feelings towards these books, my brain was just drawing a blank. That's why it took me a little bit, but my favorite and worst books of 2022 is finally here. I am combining both of them in this video. I just wanted to get this up and filmed so that I can look back on it and remember some of the books that made my year and some of the books that nearly broke my year. Let me tell you first about my favorite books of 2022. So I have 4 favorites of 2022. The first 2 that I'm going to mention are series, and they actually happen to be by the same author. The first series that I absolutely loved in 2022 is the Carnival series by Stephanie Garber. And as I mentioned when I first read Carnival, this is a series that I spent years telling myself that I hated without actually having read the series. I just saw this one review by a really big booktuber who, in my mind, I thought we had similar tastes, and maybe we do in some areas, but they said they hadn't enjoyed this series. Therefore, I automatically thought, I'm not even gonna bother picking it up because I'm not gonna like it. My now husband spent years trying to actually buy me this series because he thought, why don't you give it a try? And I think that's kind of interesting that he knew that I would like it, or he thought it was something that I might enjoy, but I was just so stubborn because of this one review. But I ended up reading the series in 2022. I binged it, absolutely loved it. I think it is so great. I enjoyed it and I loved it, and I was so swept into this world. I actually have it down here in the corner on display because I love this series. Carnival focuses on this mysterious magical competition that takes place once a year on an island, and this year the Dragna sisters Tella and Scarlet are invited to participate. However, once they get to this mysterious island, Tella is kidnapped by the competition's mastermind, or the circus leader, if you will, the ringmaster. Scarlet is then forced to participate in this competition that she had no intention of participating in because the prize is her sister. So the thing with the Carnival competition is that nothing is as it seems, and that's very hard for Scarlet to distinguish as she's trying to complete all of these tasks to find her sister. As always, take my little synopsis with a grain of salt. I am not the best when it comes to reviewing books. It is my weak spot. It's the reason why I don't do monthly wrap-ups or wrap-ups at all. Proceed with caution and just know that it is a fantastic book. There's romance, there's magic, and that's just book 1. Book 2 and 3 don't necessarily completely focus on the competition, and personally I think the second and third book may be even better than the first. But it was such a fantastic series. I'm so glad that I finally gave myself the chance to enjoy it. And the whole reason that I read the Carnival series is because I read my second favorite series of 2022, also by Stephanie Garber, and that was the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. I don't think it has a shorter series name. I would say it is a kind of a spin-off from Carnival just because there are mentions of certain characters that we saw in the Carnival series, but I do think it can stand on its own. I actually read Broken Heart first, and then because I love that so much, I ended up reading the Carnival series. I don't think you miss out on anything plot-wise. It's just obviously the little Easter eggs and the little cameos by people. You don't enjoy that cameo as much if you don't read Carnival. But nonetheless, I love Once Upon a Broken Heart. I do think I like it more than the Carnival series. So Once Upon a Broken Heart is about Evangeline Fox, who believes in true love and happy endings. She is just a sweetheart, like a little Cinnabon. So when the love of her life is set to marry someone else, Evangeline is desperate and strikes a deal with the Prince of Hearts to stop the wedding and hopefully mend her broken heart. But as we all know, it is never a good idea to strike a deal with the devil, and that's essentially what Evangeline does. What seemed like a straightforward deal absolutely turns her world upside down, and it is such a joy to read. Again, ignore my synopsis, go look on Goodreads, go look at the reviews. Oh, the characters really make it for me in this series. Oh, I love all of the characters, and the third book releases later this year, and let me tell you, book 2 ended on a cliffhanger that I don't even know how we are supposed to come back from that. Probably the favorite of 2022 as a whole, just because it made me feel all the feels and all of the emotions, and I love it when a book can do that. The next book that was a favorite was Stay Awake by Megan Golden. I gave this a 5 stars. 2022 was a big year for thrillers for me. I really found myself gravitating towards adult thrillers and suspense mystery stories. Stay Awake was the best one that I read. It kept me on the edge of my seat and guessing. It has been a little while since I read this. I read this in August of 2022, so I don't remember exactly all of my chapter by chapter thoughts, but I really don't think I figured out who it was until things kind of started to become a little bit more obvious towards the end. So I think Stay Awake is a book that's really good to kind of go in blind and discover everything, as the main character does. But Stay Awake is about Liv Reese, and when we first start the book, she is in the back of a taxi but has absolutely no idea where she is, where's this taxi taking her, how did she get there? Like, she has absolutely no memory of that night, it seems. The only clue that she has to go on is a message written on her arm that says stay awake. So it's very interesting because you are absolutely clueless at the beginning. Like, what is this book about? What are we running from? What are we hiding from? I would say you should give it a read in 2023. And the last favorite of 2022 is The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas. I listened to this as an audiobook, and I would recommend that you pick it up if you are able to. I think the voice actors did a really good job at really putting in the emotions that we are supposed to be feeling with each line. If something was suspenseful, you really heard the fear and tremor in their voice. The Hacienda is listed as a mixture of Mexican Gothic and the classic Rebecca, and I do feel like that is an accurate description for this book. This is set in the aftermath of the Mexican War of Independence, and it is about a remote house or hacienda that has a very sinister aura to it and seems to take on a life of its own. And I really enjoyed it. Again, I think the audiobook really enhanced my experience, and I always love to read books set in Mexico because my family, my mother comes from Mexico, so I always like the little tidbits that I can read about the history of Mexico or, just the culture of Mexico. And now for the disappointing reads of 2022. I really don't like to label them as the worst books because I don't think that's what they are. I just don't think they were the right book for me, and it wasn't what I was expecting. So to kick off this list, I have Lore by Alexandra Bracken. I gave this a 2 stars, and I really think that was me being generous. I hate 1-starring books. I don't know why. I don't like to do it to them. I think part of it was that I hyped myself up for this book so much, and then it ended up just not hitting that expectation that I wanted. This is supposed to be a YA novel about the Greek gods. It's about the 9 Greek gods who walk amongst us, but once a year they're vulnerable for you to kill them, and then if you do manage to kill them, then you become that god. You have 7 years to then live as that god until the next competition you try to obviously stay alive. I don't know if that premise sounded interesting or not, but if you read the synopsis on Goodreads, I thought it sounded really interesting. I love anything Greek mythology, even though I don't know very much about it other than the main gods and goddesses. I was just so excited for this book, and then when I read it, I think my main issue is that it read a little too juvenile, and I do believe that the girl is supposed to be 18 or close to 18. I can't remember, but it was really hard. I was very close to DNFing it, but again, because I'm stubborn, I pushed through it, but I did not enjoy this book whatsoever. The second disappointment of 2022 was When Night Breaks by Janella Angelis. This is the sequel to Where Dreams Descend, and I loved Where Dreams Descend. I'm pretty sure I listed it as my favorite of that year, or at least an honorable mention. I don't want to say too much because it is a sequel. The only way that I can describe it is that this second book lost the magic and allure that the first book had. I feel like the first book was so atmospheric. I had some answers to the questions that I had in the first book, but then at the same time I was so confused. The next book that disappointed me in 2022 was The Luminous Dead by Caitlin Starling. Even though this book didn't take up too much of my mind, I still wanted to mention it. I think some people, or at least I did, and I saw the other reviews, got confused as to what this book was supposed to be. So even though it was a disappointing read for me, I thought I would mention it in case it sounds interesting to you. Then maybe you'll enjoy it, but you'll know what you're getting. So I'm just going to read the first sentence from the Goodreads synopsis because I don't want to screw it up. The Luminous Dead is a thrilling atmospheric debut with the intensive drive of the Martian and gravity and the creeping dead of annihilation, in which a caver on a foreign planet finds herself on a terrifying psychological and emotional journey for survival. So that to me sounded very interesting when I saw it on the Libby app, but I went into it thinking it was going to be a little bit scary. I've seen the Annihilation movie and that was kind of scary, right? With like aliens or people getting destroyed by something we can't see. I spent this entire book waiting for that moment, for that twist where something comes out and grabs her, and it never does. It truly is a book about the psychological and emotional internal struggle. It really was disappointing, but it's more my fault rather than the book's fault. I think I misinterpreted what the synopsis was saying, but nonetheless it was a very disappointing read. I still gave it a 3 stars. The last disappointing read of 2022 is actually one that hurts me to say aloud because I got this recommendation from Lisa from With Love Lisa. Not to me specifically, but she talked about it in a vlog and how much she had loved it, so I decided to buy the first book, and that is the Gilded Duology by Marissa Meyer. It was not good. It's supposed to be a Rumpelstiltskin reimagining. I gave it a 2 stars. And this is another situation of me giving it that extra star purely out of the goodness of my heart, because if I were being perfectly honest, this is a 1-star book. In my heart, this is a 1-star book, and it is nothing to do with the book itself. I don't think it's badly written or there's anything specifically that I can nitpick. I just did not like the characters. I could not get past Cyrilda is the main character's name. She irked me and irritated me to no end. I had very strong feelings of dislike towards her, and I think it really ruined the reading experience for me. And that's all I really have for you. Those are the only books that I put on this list. I do apologize if I seem a little more rambly or not making as much sense as I usually do, if I ever do. I am in a bit of a rut, but I did want to get this video up. I also hope it was able to give you some recommendations for books to read or not read. Maybe it was a warning to stay away from certain books. I think you should always give books a try, as it happened in my case with Carnival. What one person does or doesn't like doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have the same feelings. So if there is one thing you take away from this video, is to give every book a chance. That's it to this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please give it a thumbs up if you did. My name is Elle, and I'll see you in next time's video.